Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Day of the Bomb. By Karl Bruckner. Sadako, a 4-year-old girl who is sweet but also sensitive and mischievous, is the protagonist of The Day of the Bomb, a children's tale. Austrian writer Karl Bruckner wrote it. The novel was released in 1961 and quickly became an international blockbuster, being translated into more than 70 languages and selling over 2 million copies. In an effort to raise awareness about the atrocities of war and the deaths of innocent children, this novel is a somber tale. The story revolves around 2 youngsters from a Japanese household who witnessed the greatest disaster in history, the atomic bomb's detonation. Sadako Sasaki, the protagonist, was just 4 years old when a nuclear bomb exploded near her home. Sadako was harmed when the bomb went off approximately a mile and a half distant from her, causing radiation sickness. She was eventually diagnosed with leukemia, and her prognosis was only 1 year. She was inspired to build 1,000 paper cranes after reading a book on the popular Japanese idea that if she made enough of them, she could earn the opportunity to have one of her wishes come true. Traditional Japanese symbols of serenity and health, such as the crane, represent Sadako's desire to live. Even though she was determined to make those cranes, she ran into a number of obstacles along the way, including a lack of paper. She worked tirelessly to achieve her goal of producing 990 paper cranes before she tragically passed away. This story is based on the true tragedy of Sadako, a little girl who died from radiation poisoning as a result of the bombing of Hiroshima. Paper cranes were being manufactured by the deceased woman, although the actual quantity of them is unknown. Friends crafted as many paper cranes as needed until there were 1,000 in all, and they interred them with her. Popularized by this book and other stories, Sadako has remained a symbol of nuclear war victims and war victims in general, since civilians are the most common victims of both. After witnessing the blast, Sadako was a happy and playful little girl who died with a horrific death. For younger readers, this work serves as an admonition and a cautionary tale about the dangers of allowing such things to happen again when they take over the globe. Every anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing in Japan is marked by the recounting of Sadako's narrative. In 1945, Japan was in the midst of a devastating war, and the effects of the conflict could be seen at every turn. Even though Hiroshima was one of the very few Japanese cities that was spared from being bombed on a regular basis, everything in the city was a reminder of the war. A lack of food, absenteeism from the classrooms, and the absence of all the men capable of fighting were all factors in the situation. As a result, many Japanese citizens were convinced of victory, despite the commander of the General Staff, Field Marshal Hara, believing otherwise. As he kept an eye on all the conflicts being fought on all fronts, he was notified of the withdrawal of their troops. At the start of the book, the reader is introduced to a family named the Sasakis. A barber, Father Sasaki, is now serving in the military, while his wife, Mother Sasaki, works at Mitsubishi's shipyard as a 389. Shige, their 10-year-old son, is currently babysitting his 4-year-old sister, Sadako, while the class is in session. Both of them spend much of their time seeking for meals while mom works. When the elderly woman saw Sadako's tears because of her hunger, she felt sorry for her. Often, Shigeo and Sadako run across their neighbors, a widowed Kumakihi who is convinced that she has a pot full of rice buried in her backyard, so Shigeo assists her in her hunt. Kenya Nishioka, a starving elderly boat builder, is another encounter they have. A military base in the middle of the Pacific Ocean prepares for the final confrontation with Japan in the meantime. Serious events began to unfold while the ordinary soldiers were busy conversing and playing cards. The base of the Manhattan Project, a nuclear device created by a group of scientists between 1943 and 1945, was visited by a group of enigmatic people. According to the plan, the war's eventual conclusion should be hastened significantly. An airplane dropped the bomb on Tiananmen Square. Although the soldiers saw the crate containing the explosive, they had no idea what was going on. The day before the bomb was dropped, a B-29 bomber flew over Hiroshima and took pictures of the attack area. It was called Enola Gray by the mother of Sergeant Tibbett. On August 6, 1945, the bomber took off. Yasuko Sasaki asked Shige to accompany Sadako to the food line. Many others were also standing, tensely anticipating what would happen. Shigeo saved Sadako from being crushed under the weight of the stampeding crowd, and the two of them made their way home. Shigeo decided to have a swim in the lake on the way home, and Sadako sat in the grass to await his return. Thunder and lightning struck as soon as he entered the water, blinding him with their intensity. He was tossed onto the beach by a violent wind and began searching for Sadako, who was screaming and covered in bruises and her clothes had been torn. Their mother was likewise in a state of shock, focusing on her children despite her own injuries, despite the fact that she was also hurt. Even though she was surrounded by the screams of injured workers, she hurried out of the workplace in pursuit of her children. A bomb went off at 8:45 a.m., instantly killing 86,000 people and severely injuring another 72,000. In all, 6,820 dwellings and 3,750 structures were reduced to ashes, leaving the city in a smoldering heap of devastation. Interesting that the people who hurled the bomb were unaware of the terrible effects, merely reporting their accomplishment to their superiors. As a result, the Japanese troops were able to sign their submission more quickly, which expedited the war's end. Japanese soldiers, used to believing they were invincible, were taken aback. Shigeo and Sadako are still traversing the city 2 years after the bomb was detonated, just as they were before. Though he feared that his entire family had perished in the war, their father returned home after the conflict had ended. When he watched their house burn to the ground, he had already resolved to take his own life, but he changed his mind when he saw his family starving in the river shoal. With the help of their father, the children began acquiring materials that could be used to reconstruct their house. As the factories stayed closed and the number of patients grew, the days became even more difficult. As a result, they were unable to obtain any food. The father Sasaki built a hut because he hoped to one day establish a barber shop. Shikamazu, the dragon figurine that Sadako discovered while excavating the ruins, was given the name by her. When she was younger, Shigeo would scare her with the figurine. Their father wanted to sell the dragon figurine, but the guardians of a black marketer named Ofu snatched it from him, so he had to buy barber tools instead. Her father delivered the paper kite crafted by the master Shibata, who had helped him obtain the tools he needed to operate a barber shop, to Sadako instead of her bronze dragon, which she had been longing for. When Sadako admits to Shige that she was burned with the lightning, she means that she was also radiated. In response, Shigeo accused her of fabricating events. As time went on, Sasaki built a house and opened a barber shop, employing a few other people. She is 14 years old and is enrolled in school consistently, and Master Shibata has resumed kite construction. To celebrate International Peace Day, he was swamped with orders for thousands of paper lanterns. A cycling race from Tokyo to Hiroshima was organized as a memorial, and Sadako was racing on behalf of her school, riding the bike for the final 10 kilometers. Despite feeling poorly, Sadako could hardly wait for the race to begin. But her health deteriorated and she was hospitalized after finishing the race in 19th place. In addition to the support of American Dr. Floyd Owens, Hiroshi Okada was treating her condition with the help of an American doctor who felt remorse for the destruction of Pearl Harbor. Every day, Sadako's parents come to see her, and her brother Shigeo, who is also in the hospital, brings her the dragon figurine Shikimate. The figurine was returned to Master Shibata by the collector. Sadako is oblivious to the seriousness of her situation and is steadfast in her belief that she may recover her health. For her prayers to be answered, her father tells her to build 1,000 paper cranes. To decorate her room, she cut out cranes from a sheet of paper that Shigeo had brought to her house. Sadly, Shigeo lost away after making his 400th crane, and Sadako died at crane number 989, having been in severe pain since the 900th crane had been made. A statue of Sadako, holding a golden crane while perched on a nuclear bomb, will be unveiled in the Garden of Peace. Students from all throughout the country collaborated to create the statue. Sadako Sasaki. From the age of 4, the main character of the book chronicles her childhood. She is a typical adolescent girl, full of energy, both good and bad, who adores and idolizes her elder brother and follows him about wherever he goes. She's been well reared, is polite, and is both enthusiastic and reliable. She is oblivious to her deteriorating health, believing that 1,000 cranes are at work in the sky. All the innocent children that were killed as a result of the conflict were represented by her. Shigeo Sasaki. Since he was 10 years old, Sadako's sibling has also performed throughout his childhood. Japanese culture has taught him to treat the elderly with respect and to bow to them while meeting them, as he was taught at home. He's dependable, and his younger sister looks to him for guidance and direction. Despite the fact that she was often in his way, he never left her side. Yasuko Sasaki. His children's mother is a typical Japanese woman, always following her husband's commands. As a mother, She devotes her life to her children and is constantly concerned for their well-being at work. For the sake of providing more food for her children, she continued to starve herself. Father Sasaki. Upon his return from the war, he assumes control of his family's affairs. He is a dedicated father who does everything in his power to help his family escape poverty. He accomplishes his goals with only a smattering of luck. He conducts himself in the manner expected of a typical Japanese man. Wien, Austria, sees the birth of composer Karl Bruckner in 1906. After he graduated from high school, he held a variety of jobs. During his time in the German army during World War II, he spent 2 years in South America and was exposed to the horrors of war. After a few years of roaming, he established his talent as a writer by having his young adult novels become international bestsellers and being translated into other languages. As a result of his writings, he was recognized with several honors, including a nomination for the Anderson Prize, widely considered the most prestigious award in children's literature. After his 40th birthday, he began writing more for children and youth, writing for a variety of newspapers and releasing a number of novels for both children and adults. More than 90 languages have been adapted from his works. Karl Bruckner's 1961 book, The Day of the Bomb, remained his most popular work. Only Two Robots and Sickness of the Youth are other well-known works by this author. As a result, he was awarded the Vienna City Prize for the Best Children's Book and the Best Youth Book. On this day in 1958, Bruckner is laid to rest in Vienna. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.